Okay, welcome folks. My name is Sam. I am the Participation and Development Coordinator at the Youth Affairs Council Victoria, or YACVic, as we're usually known. I use he, him pronouns, and I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I'd like to pay my respects to the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to also note that sovereignty was never ceded across the land and no treaty has been signed. And so we live, work and profit from stolen land to this day. I would also like to introduce you to an incredible piece of participatory art that sits in our office in the YACVic office in the middle of Melbourne, currently closed down to the public. This was created at the Koori Youth Summit in 2017. Participatory art in the way that the members of the conference were able to write on the feathers of Bunjil's great wings, talking about their hopes and dreams for the future. And so Bunjil has two laws for people entering on the land of the Kulin Nation, to look after country and to look after the children. And so I think this is great context for us to place our conversations today as we focus on the work that we do with children and young people. I'd also like to acknowledge the incredible struggle that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people are facing during COVID-19 and during the Black Lives Matter protests and the considerable protests that have been going around across the country in relation to the number of deaths in custody, the outrageous number of deaths in custody that is still taking place despite a Royal Commission taking place 30 years ago. And so, with all this in mind, it's great to have you all here. Today we're talking about adapting youth services to online delivery. We've got over 100 people signed up, which is fantastic. It's obviously a very popular and present issue for people in our sector. We've got about 88 in the call at the moment, and so I'm sure there'll be more arriving soon as we go. The webinar today is being recorded and it will be uploaded to Facebook and YouTube after today. We'll send through the links to those to everybody who's registered. So if you need to drop off the call today, that's okay. And if you have colleagues who want to catch up on the content, then let them know that we'll be sharing that afterwards today as well. So who's the Youth Affairs Council Victoria? Hopefully most of you know us. We're the peak body for young people and those that work with young people. And so our work is around prioritising the voice and human rights of young Victorians and supporting the sector to work predominantly in policy development, particularly in response to the Victorian government. And we also work in sector development, such as webinars like this, such as training, such as networks that we coordinate through the work that we do across the state. We're very, very pleased to be presenting this webinar in partnership with the Port Phillip and Stonnington Youth Network. They've been meeting regularly and continue to do so during COVID-19. And this is part of a series of conversations they've been having about how to adapt to COVID-19. And so when they came to us and said, we're looking for a way to open up this conversation, we were really, really thrilled to jump on board. So huge thanks to Claire and Celeste, who are on the call today and are managing the chat room as well. And so if you're working in that area, Port Phillip or Stonnington, please do get in touch with Claire and Celeste, and they'll be happy to give you more info and sign you up to the network as well. Is that most of the things I need to do behind the scenes? It pretty much is. If you're new to WebEx, have a little look around, get used to finding where the chat room is, get used to the fact that you can turn off your video if that's off-putting for you. You don't need to have your video on today, it's a presentation, and so you might find that it saves your internet bandwidth, might make things work a bit smoother as well. The biggest ask for everyone is to make sure that you keep your mics on mute unless you're asking a question in the Q&A. So that helps with background noise and feedback loops and all of those nasty things that can happen online as well. If you've got any questions at any time, feel free to throw them in the chat room. We'll be having a question and answer session at the end of the presentations, and so please feel free to put your questions in there for the presenters as well. And what we'll do is identify those and speak to them after the presentations. We've got 3 awesome presentations for you today, one from the Eco Centre in Port Phillip, talking about how to adapt real-life outdoor environmental programs for young people to an online environment. We've got a presentation from a freezer provider at Moorland. They call themselves Amped Up. They've been running some awesome events online during COVID-19. And then we've also got Karen from Headspace Elsternwick, who's going to be talking to us about how they have adapted to delivering their services online as well, in case management and one-to-one services. So we like to think that we found a really great diversity of experiences and ways to work with young people, and we hope that you're going to get a lot out of today. What I want to do now is have a quick look at what you've been saying to us that you'd like to get out of today. So just give me a moment and I'll be able to share with you the results of the Mentimeter. And so these are some of the things that people have said that they'd like to get out of today. Hearing different ways of engaging with young people during these times, new ideas to engage with young people in a meaningful way, networking and innovation ideas. No point reinventing the wheel, that's exactly right. Just to see what everyone else is doing and borrow, steal any new ideas. All ideas are stolen from somewhere. The great Pablo Picasso told us that. Lots of wonderful ideas. Understanding of what others in youth services are doing in the online space for young people, how to encourage meaningful youth participation in online space. New ideas to engage with young people online in a meaningful way. These are great. Feel free to add to these as we go. Actually, what I'll do is I'll move on to the next question. So it's a little bit interactive to kick us off here. What I'd love us to do now is to answer the next question, which is, what do you think are your biggest barriers to running online activities and events? And so if you can head to menti.com and use the code 929351, we'll be able to rank these in order, and the results are going to come up here for everyone to see. So hopefully that's making sense for everyone. So you head to menti.com and you type in that code. I can also share the direct link with you. So in the chat box now, I'm just putting the direct link that you can click on that takes you directly there. So they're moving around a considerable amount as people start to add to them, which is interesting. Looks like lack of interest from staff is down the bottom, which is great to know. And the others are sort of switching around as we go, hey. Risk aversion and lack of access to the right technology. There's been some real troubles, hasn't there, across the sector about getting access to Zoom, particularly. Today we're working on WebEx to work around Zoom, and I think it's great. It's great to be able to showcase a different technology. We committed to Zoom pretty early at YACVic. We found that we felt it was safe enough for the work that we were doing. There were no restrictions for us, and so we focused exclusively on Zoom. But it's great to see how people are using other technologies, and WebEx, for me, seems to work just as well. Lack of interest from young people is a particularly interesting one, I think. It's a tricky one to unravel, isn't it? The things that I hear across the sector are that it's generally been okay to adapt to services when you've got an existing relationship with young people, but creating that relationship through online platforms is a real challenge. And so that is something that may come up today. It may be something that we look into in the future as well. YACVic have other webinars coming up. We have a webinar next week looking at digital youth work, so very similar to some of the conversations we'll be having today. So I'll put a link in the chat room during the presentations to direct you to where to find out more information about YACVic events and training as well. But That's great. That's a really clear example of kind of how it is across the board. Those top three are really switching around, aren't they, as we go? So I'm going to stop sharing that now. I'm going to head back to the presentation, and we will kick off with our first presentation shortly. So what I'd like to do now is to introduce our first speaker. Dr. Cécile van der Burgh is the Education Manager at the Port Phillip Eco Centre. For nearly 20 years, he has led a wide range of award-winning advocacy campaigns and collaborative initiatives protecting and celebrating nature across Australia. And so if all is well your end, Cécile, I'll pass over to you for a presentation for 10 minutes.
Thank you so much, Sam, and welcome everyone. It's so exciting to present to you all today and to see people from all over the state. So that's beautiful to see the messages going in from regional Victoria right to the Murray, to the East Coast, to the West Coast, the South Coast. That's fantastic. Yes, so my name is Cécile. I've been working at the Eco Centre for the last year and in the role of Education Manager only for 3 months. So COVID came into the third week that I was working as Education Manager. And the Eco Centre is a community-managed organisation with a dedicated team of scientists, educators and volunteers. And we design and implement environmental programs. And our expertise is Port Phillip Bay, so the bay near Melbourne, our great blue backyard, and the health of the urban ecology of Greater Melbourne within the traditional lands of the Kulin Nation. And also I want to pay my respects to elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge that the land was never ceded. Thank you, Sam, for also sharing that beautiful story about Bunjil, the eagle. That's a story we tell all our youth every time, you know, to look after the land and the children of the land. So we connect communities and their ecosystems in over 160 Melbourne suburbs, and we work from the city of Port Phillip from our centre at the Botanic Gardens in St Kilda, and we bring together people from all backgrounds and ages to inspire environmental solutions and leadership. And each year we collaborate with about 25 affiliate organizations, 120 schools, and 250 partnership organizations. And for this particular program, I want to acknowledge the fact that we are supported by the City of Port Phillip as one of our main partners, and Dive to You to help us with the snorkeling sessions. So we use the physical world as our classroom, and we connect students with their natural world and youth. And each of our programs is tailor-made through the local lens and focus on collaboration and community connectiveness. And so for today, I really want to focus on our Alive Outside program and taking 100% outdoor program inside with very little notice. As we all know, COVID happened overnight, and that was a challenge for everyone to adapt quickly. Our free Alive Outside program is tailored to 12 to 25-year-olds who would love to explore and help nature in the local Port Phillip area, local parks, on the bay, in the beaches. And our programs are designed to explore our local places, get up close to wildlife, and take action for our local environment. And Sam, I think we've lost the screen, because I'm seeing your screen at the moment. Thanks. These are active sessions that see participants walk, cycle and snorkel their beaches within the area of Port Phillip. And so I wanted to today focus on some of the sessions that we ran beforehand. So these were focusing on getting up and close with our local penguin population, which is on the St Kilda Pier. I'll have a question for you out there, and you can think about this and maybe answer the question later. How many penguins you think live on the pier in St Kilda? Okay. And then we also do snorkeling sessions and beach cleanups with local groups of youth. So this was before COVID happened. And the snorkeling sessions were incredible because people learned for the first time to get out in their blue backyard. Most of these kids have never used the snorkel before. They've sometimes never swim in the bay. Sometimes they're afraid of the, the creatures that live there. And we had one girl that was particularly afraid of the rays. And I would like to go to the next slide. So this is Shreya. Shreya is 12 years old. And we took her out for her very first snorkeling session. And before she went out, she was quite scared of the wildlife in the bay. After that, she wrote to us a letter with a picture saying that it was one of the best experiences in her life. So that's what happens when you take young people into immersive experiences in their local environment. And this is with the Dive to You crew. So this was a very popular session. And then when COVID came, we had the challenge of adapting this very quickly online. We had access to a Zoom account, which we used. And our first session actually was on a free Zoom account. We only had 40 minutes to complete our session. So that's how nimble we had to be. And our original idea was to take a snorkel, take the crew of Dive to You was going to snorkel in the bay, film what they were seeing underwater, and then we would broadcast it online to the participants. That was our grand plan. Of course, that didn't work because you needed 5G for that, huge technology, that all didn't work. And so we had to come up with a plan very quickly. And what we did was we engaged in storytelling instead of, the big technology. So our four presenters were all experts in the marine environment. I'm muted at the moment. And someone please mute Robin. Thank you. So here you can see the group going out and the kids going out for the first time. And there's quite a big group there. So when we took the program online, we engaged in storytelling. So I'd like to go to the next slide. So here you can see us in our first session. There's 4 of us, so we made sure that one of us was organizing the technology and the facilitating of the session, and making sure that the others had time to discuss all their stories, to share all their stories. So here you see Fam, Matt, and Ben. They all have different expertise, and the kids who were asking questions, we asked children to ask their questions up front. So we send out invitations, but we also asked them to all have their questions ready, sent to us prior to the event a few days so we could prepare them. So we got these great ranges of questions about where the shipwrecks are in the bay, how deep the bay is, what the best adventures were that the divers had ever experienced before. Are there any great white sharks in the bay? Do we have orcas? So we took them on really a diving adventure and taking the stories of all these different questions a bit further and having discussions about them, and took them far further than just a quick, fact-based question and answer, but actually the stories around them, what the divers had experienced when they were diving, what encounters they had with these species. So the kids were really involved and engaged. And we also used a lot of props. So as you can see, we were all wearing snorkels. We had fish and octopi around, like props like these, and had lots of fun. And I think one of the things that we learned from that is an engagement doesn't have to be high tech. Storytelling is still one of the oldest, crafts of people. And it's really important to do that together with young people, and to give them opportunities to ask questions also during the session. So we had the chat box open, and we went on tangents as well with them. So I guess I want to share some of the challenges, some of the lessons, and some of the successes of this program. I guess one of the things that really worked was to have pre-registered groups. So because we were going to take the snorkelers outside, we already had a group ready to go online, and that made a huge difference. So our first session had 40 participants. I think it was a lot harder to recruit new groups online that were not already formed. So we've learned that it's like in the real world, it's a lot easier to engage groups that are already a group in an online event, and to work strategically, I guess, with those groups. It's a lot harder to put an event together without already those networks formed or the group already formed. It can work, but it poses some challenges. Also in that you might not know the participants. So even if you have the event marketed or advertised as being for 12 to 25-year-olds, you still get people who slip in from other ages. And so what we had to do was make sure that we look at the whole registration list, and we had a call around to make sure that, you know, the people that were engaging in our events were the right target audience, and that making sure that they were all youth, and also making sure that there were participants we wanted in the sessions. So I guess that was a learning. The other learning was sharing video and tech. Sometimes it's really hard to share tech videos with sound. It doesn't actually always work. You don't know why sometimes. So what we did was kept it very simple. So if people were sharing from their screens, just having pictures or having online video clips rather than clips running from the computer themselves, because they sometimes cause problems. Something that also worked was having a team of 4 of presenters that already knew each other, and one having the technology. So I was managing the technology and sort of the facilitation of the questions, but the presenters themselves could all focus on their stories, and that worked really well. I think moving forward, we will definitely take these online sessions forward for our outdoors programs as introductions. One thing that we found is actually when you're outdoors, nothing beats the outdoors. It's the best thing. But one of the things that we do want is have the introductions maybe a week before we go out, so you can already focus on some of the safety procedures or the things that introductions before the kids come to the beaches, that they know where they're going, that they have some of that information to prepare mentally, so it doesn't come all at the same time, you know, within the 1.5 hours that we have. So I think online delivery is a fantastic tool to prepare and also to evaluate after the sessions and to already build a rapport with the group. We also think that the asking questions beforehand, knowing where the kids are coming from, what they want to know, is a fantastic way to get into into the session. So to start from where they are rather than presenting a standard kind of program. And we always do that, but this online, it kind of really works quite well with young people. They like typing their questions and they like getting online to provide their feedback. Sometimes a little easier than in a group, posing questions in front of a group. So I think if you have any questions, I'm really happy to answer them. I would say that, I hope you get to go out. If you're working with a youth group or a youth organization, I hope you get to go out and explore your local environment. And if you're ever, interested in coming to Port Phillip Bay or the area around Melbourne, we'd love to work with you and share our local experiences. And also maybe take you to the bay in an online experience sometime, because this is the other benefit of it. You can do it long distance and you can learn a whole heap of things without being physically there. But again, nothing beats being together, and sharing that learning together for young and old. But yes, the online experience has definitely taught us a whole heap of things that we didn't know before we had to do this. So thanks for listening.
Well, that's absolutely great. Thank you so much, Cécile. And I can't think of an environment that would be more challenging in many ways, the underwater world, to try and transfer to the online environment. So it was really interesting to see the journey that you went through, and particularly the things that you noted around how online environments can be so useful for the preparation and the pre-work and even the follow-up work as well. And I think that's going to be a fascinating thing to keep track of and to keep us up to date with, how you go with that, how you integrate that online learnings with the real world stuff that you're so passionate about, obviously.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much, Cécile. And what we'll do is we'll move on to our next speaker now, and we'll come back to questions afterwards. So if you've got any questions specifically to Cécile, feel free to throw them in the chat box. She'll be able to reply during the next presentation, or we can open it up for discussion afterwards. So again, thank you very much, Cécile. And next I'll pass over to Nicholas. So Nicholas is a youth programme support worker at Moreland City Council, where he coordinates both the Amped Up, which is Moreland Freezer events youth group, and the musical programming of Moreland's very own Icicles studio. So I'm hoping all is well with your sound and video, Nicholas, and I'll pass over to you.
Hey everyone. Yeah, thanks, Sam. I really want to go to the beach now, but I'll be talking about the Moreland area. That's where I'm from. So that's Coburg, Brunswick, all the way to Faulkner, kind of in the north. And yeah, I'm a freezer coordinator, and I've seen there's some other freezer coordinators here today. So hopefully I don't let you down with what I have to say. And I should mention that there's many freezer groups around Victoria that are doing great things. We're just one of them, and I'm really happy to present today. So yeah, and if you don't know what freezer is, freezer groups are basically young youth groups that put on all ages events, generally music events, skate events, and so on. We're more focused on music at the moment, but I'll get into that now. Yeah, so I coordinate the group for the last year and a half or so with Laurie Long, who can't be here today. Our group's fairly small compared to some other groups. We have 9 young people who are members, with around 5 that are really engaged, 2 less so due to school and university, another that's a little bit too busy in their life to contribute, but is still really connected with us, especially when it comes to when we do fun things like pizza parties and whatnot. They're always present then, which is awesome. And another member that's become quite disengaged during this period, and I'm sure everybody's quite aware of the disproportionate impact this period has had on some young people, which, yeah, I'm sure we're all across that, but I could maybe talk more to that a bit later. But that's had a real impact on them. So obviously we're still really in touch and reaching out and supporting, but not so connected with the group at the moment. And just a quick little bit about our group, Amped Up, because basically all freezer groups have the ability to be quite autonomous and build their own identity relevant to where they are. And ours, being, from Coburg, Brunswick, and as I said, all the way up the north of Faulkner, we've kind of built our whole identity on inclusivity, diversity and community since Laura and I have been there, and the young people coming along with us. So we've made, a real conscious effort to redress gender and diversity imbalances that are typical in the music industry. We also aim to support causes and issues that our young people and the community are passionate about at any given time. We feel like we might as well be doing that at the same time, especially if we have this money to spend, we might as well be putting it to good use. And that's done generally by partnering with organisations like Minus 18 is one, Girls Rock is another, Undercurrent Victoria, who do great work. We've done kind of fundraisers or partnerships with them in recent events. And with this kind of building of our identity, I guess, around being socially conscious, the team's culture, like the young people, our group, the culture is, we've seen a shift since when we started, a real shift with members like being very socially conscious, very aware of each other's emotional states and being really caring for each other. And it's been great that Laurie and I often can step back and they really support each other, and they're really connecting socially, which even in this time, which is great. And that's what we're here to talk about. A bit about how we run. We have 3 groups. So we have media and promotions, a production group, and programming, and they existed before COVID-19, but we've shifted the roles and responsibilities of those into the online world. This is our logo, by the way. Oh, and thanks, Sam, for putting that up there. That I'd represent today. Don't usually put on things other than PJs at the moment, so it's, you're welcome. And our meetings are weekly, 1 to 1.5 hours. That also happened in COVID-19, but now it's online meetings. And Laura and I should mention those 3 teams. We're a part of all of them, and we oversee them, moderate them, and kind of just give tasks a gentle nudge and that kind of thing. So, but otherwise we try to, being youth-led is the most important thing. So that's what we're always striving for. What have we done? Finally getting to the transition, as is illustrated in this slide. There's a photo there of June Jones performing on March the 1st this year at Sydney Road Street Party, and you can see we had real-life humans. They're living, breathing humans there, and now we don't have that. The whole music industry is really feeling it right now. So what we've done is we've adapted to working online, and the major project, and probably the reason we've been asked to present a bit today, is that we've created this thing called Amped Up TV, which actually began at that, just coincidentally at that show, by doing Vox Pops with the bands. And that was one of our members, Mia's idea. And it just turned out that it was good timing, I guess, for the unforeseen events that were about to happen with the lockdown and isolation and whatnot. So what does Amped Up TV involve? We have been producing self-care videos made by musicians, which is quite pertinent at this time. So we've had some big names like Jen Clower and Alice Ivy, and then some more emerging and local acts like the Vovos, who are doing great things at the moment. They came through the Girls Rock program. We're presented those Vox Pops that I mentioned from the March show at Sydney Road Street Party. We've also had performance videos, also some big names and ones that are kind of coming up through the ranks. So we've had Georgia Mack from Camp Cope, a great electronic outfit, Lefkada, Hannah and Jesse Lee's Bad Habits, which is some good country music. So a real diversity of music styles as well. And we've also had a couple of e-zine interviews. So that's Q&As with people like Courtney Barnett's a really popular one that we managed to get, and Tall Relatives. And that's kind of focusing on their isolation experience and creativity, and that's presented in a very visual format. So that's where the e-zine part comes in, and we're just lucky enough to have recruited a young person who's passionate about e-zines. So e-zines are a thing, which I've just learned. So far we've had about 15 edited videos posted to date. So that's produced and edited and posted by the young people most of the time. So it's quite a lot. It's been a bigger workload than what we had before, which I'll get into in a bit as potentially a challenge. We've contributed to a live streaming event with Isolate, and Isolate's potentially Australia's largest profile streaming event for kind of indie acts. That's been massive. They kicked off straight away during the COVID-19 period, and we're donating all donations to Support Act, which is a great organisation that helps musicians. And we're lucky enough to curate a small section of 3 young acts. 2 of them are associated with Amped Up, so that was a great pathway for them, and great experience for the whole team, because that was a very real world, like big music industry kind of thing that they got to participate in. And we're also working on a live streaming gig for Pride Month, which is June, Pride Month, and that's going to be on June 30th, and that's in collaboration with Minus 18. So we'll be doing a similar thing, curating a few acts. Yeah. So if we can just go to the next image, Sam. So what are the kind of the successes? What have the learnings been and the challenges? So yeah, I was going to mention at the start, I am talking a lot about successes. There's been a lot of challenges as well, and not everything's been perfect. Also wanted to really quickly mention that in terms of the young people being engaged, I know with a lot of other freezer groups that hasn't been the case, and so I might not have all the answers today, but as to why our group is more engaged, that's the first success I've got written down, actually, that our engagement has actually skyrocketed. When we're meeting in person every week, we're often getting just 1 or 2 members coming on some weeks. And then we had a couple of weeks off and focused on this Amped Up TV project, as it seemed to make sense, and doing weekly virtual meetings. And that, yeah, everything skyrocketed with our group. So we've had people, almost daily in contact, happily talking socially, but also task orientated as well. So yeah, there's a lot of snack talk, a lot of jokes in our group. The snack talk is often very vegan friendly, given that a good portion of our group are from Brunswick, so that might not be surprising. And yeah, the other engagement, as I was mentioning before, self-care and the team just really working within themselves has been great. The sense of purpose is another success, I'd say. Just focusing on that one project and everybody having a clearly identified role and responsibility has been great. We had one member recently who I also work with on another music-based Moreland Youth project tell me that Amped Up and this other project was an excuse to get out of bed in the morning, and I've really seen her come out of her shell. So that's, yeah, like just amazing to hear. Don't hear that kind of direct feedback every day in this job. Upskilling, the team has actually made a gigantic leap with Amped Up TV. None of them had any real experience with editing or video production, and limited experience of really systematic, like, social media and scheduling, and we were a bit more free and easy before. So that's been incredible to see, and some of the others have picked up some work with Moreland Youth editing now and doing some other things. So pathways, also the chance to perform on Isolate, as I mentioned before, for a couple of our members was huge. And we've also been able to promote even more acts and young people via Amped Up TV with those 15 or so videos that we've made so far in 8 weeks, I think. And usually we might have done one event in 8 weeks, if that. So experience, I think that speaks for itself, that all that experience of Isolate and working with big profile musicians has been great for morale. Everyone, and the bragging rights, within their friendship groups, to say that they interviewed Courtney Barnett or something has been huge. I understand that that might not always be possible to score those big names, but they've also got a lot out of supporting young acts that are coming through the ranks as well. And the other final success I really want to mention is that our team and all the youth workers here, we know it like it's Youth Work 101, but the more youth-led you can be, the better. And as I've kind of already alluded to, it's definitely, the group is the most youth-led that it's ever been, which has been amazing. I mean, it means that they're doing real work that they find really valuable. They can own it. They're asking the acts they want to ask, and they don't have Laurie and I hassling them, or Laurie and I getting frustrated because we're directing everything. So it's really given us a chance to step back, which is, you know, for a year and a half, what we've been trying to do. Obviously, that doesn't always happen, and we have to pick up. I don't want to say the slack, it sounds a bit negative, but, you know, people have lives and they're volunteers, and so things can't always happen. So we're obviously there to do the work if need be. But in general, they've been really motivated, and yeah, it's been more youth-led than ever. So now, if I could just go to the last image here, Sam. Conscious of time, I'll try to speed up here. We've just got some challenges now. Yeah, the fun and the work. So that pretty much illustrates what I've been talking about. That's a lot of spreadsheets and graphs and no, not really graphs, tables and documents that Laurie and I make and the young people make as well. So that's less fun, really. Yeah, so, but I'll start with the obvious challenge first, the COVID-19 period, while we're all here today, and all that comes with it: isolation, shift to online work for many, mental health concerns that are exacerbated, employment, a lot of, like probably half of our young people lost their work, school disruption, that's a huge thing. Yeah, and young people are just a group in society that's been hit particularly hard, which I don't need to go on about, I'm sure. Motivation, real challenge. Like I mentioned how excited everyone was at the start, but of course, naturally, when it's an ongoing thing, we're doing 2 posts, 2 video posts, making the videos, 2 promotional posts a week. That starts to wear off when it becomes too much like work, and the newness fades, of course. So to counter that, it's just youth work of trying to balance things out, that not being too strict about timelines, focusing on self-care, really prioritizing recognition for the team as well. So we had a pizza party, as I mentioned before, a couple of weeks ago, which I think was on one of the slides. Might have seen the team there, maybe the slide before. So that kind of stuff balances it out and reminds everyone that we're here to connect as much as anything else with each other. Capacity, yeah, we've had some real imbalances. Obviously, the production team has to work really hard with editing, and that, you know, they're doing closed captions and all this kind of stuff. Whereas programming, you can maybe ask a few artists and then sit back. And then, you know, the media team, because it was so constant, that became a bit hard as well. So the real learning from that, the probably most valuable thing to say about that is that we're constantly evaluating within those meetings that we have weekly. I'm saying, is it too much? We don't want it to be too much. Are you feeling it too much? Like, how's everyone just feeling in life? And then, you know, we've cut back to, well, I think we're still doing 2 video posts, but we're not doing the promotional posts. And then we're now supplementing videos for some other shared content and things to make it easier, but also we want to keep the project going, because that's what everybody feels motivated by, and nobody wants to feel like we let it kind of die down too much. So it's that balancing act that I mentioned before. And finally, the last challenge, and probably the most timely, is you know what I said before, we really pride ourselves on inclusivity, diversity, and accessibility. We have to keep reminding ourselves that it's a constantly space, and one that we need to continue to engage with in good faith. We continue to learn, listen, educate ourselves, and adapt our work to the best practice. The challenge here is to always strive to be better at inclusivity and diversity and accessibility. So we have had a really strong representation of young people, people of colour, female, queer, gender diverse. within our community, on stage, in production of our shows, and in the content. And the team are very aware of, like, very socially aware. But, you know, recently, with the Black Lives Movement being such a big topic at the moment, rightly so, that's started discussions within our group that have been really constructive, really nuanced, informed discussions, a lot of research happening. But then we have to reflect that we don't actually have anyone in our group that identifies as a Black person in our group, and that's something to reflect on. So that's yeah, just we asked an Indigenous artist that we've had before, and they asked the group some really big questions, you know, about is this a tokenistic gesture? Are there other Black trans artists performing? How will the Black Lives Matter movement be addressed? And how are the stakeholders, or who are the stakeholders, and how are they funded? And these are really big questions for the group, and really great discussions, and just a reminder that we need to keep reflecting on these things and doing better. I really like that quote, "Nothing about us without us." So yeah, that's just an example of where we're hanging our hat on trying to be inclusive and diverse and accessible, but we really need to engage with that and always do better. So finally, hopefully I haven't taken too long. Opportunities going forward, we're going to keep Amped Up TV going for sure. As long as we can work out the capacity to continue with the young people to make sure that it's a sustainable venture. It's definitely given us a chance to be more accessible for young people that can't go out to shows or live further away or anything like that. We're definitely going to augment it with live shows that we have, you know, perhaps at Oxygen, a youth space that we're lucky enough to have as a resource, and do live streams. It's been another just great opportunity to promote and personalize our group and draw new members, to draw focus on issues that they care about, and to raise voices for a more diverse group in the community, to really amplify, if I can say that. I didn't mean to say that pun, amped up. Yeah, and finally, it has just kickstarted a way of working that we always discussed that we should do, and that young people might really respond to, but I guess our capacity as workers, we weren't forced to do that, but now we have been forced to do that. So I don't see us going back at all. Thanks so much for listening to my ramblings. I hope I didn't go too far over time, and hopefully I can clear up any questions later on.
Yeah, you did great. Thanks so much, Nick. I am conscious of time, so what I might do is suggest that you have a little look through the chat box, because there are some specific questions for you, and I'm nervous we're not going to get time to get to them. So if you're happy just to kind of spend a few minutes looking through the chat and replying to that, that would be awesome. But thanks so much. It was a really great introduction to everything you've been working on, and we were just a bit ambitious with timings. I think everybody's so passionate about the work they're doing. It was probably unrealistic to expect you to stick to 10 minutes. So that's probably on us, not on you, mate. And yeah, what I'll do now is pass on to our final presenter, who's Kaz. Kaz is the community awareness worker at Headspace Elsternwick, and she's going to give us a little different perspective, not necessarily on the group activities and projects that we heard about through Freezer and through the Eco Centre, but thinking a little bit more about adapting youth services in a one-to-one environment, I believe. I've put a link in the chat box for those that are leaving early. Please do complete our brief evaluation and stick around to the end, and we'll show you some of the results of that as well. So without any further ado, hoping that we've got sound and vision with Kaz, I'll pass over to Kaz.
Okay, can everyone see me?
We can
Fantastic.
hear you.
And hearing's
great.
okay? Voice, yeah. Obviously with Headspace, most people know our organisation. So we are representing youth mental health from 12 to 25-year-olds. my particular job is community awareness worker. So the biggest challenge, I suppose, at this stage is to engage community when it has to be online. So our first point of call really was to look at how we're going to service our young people's appointments. So it was really important, and obviously because we're a mental health organisation, their mental health was definitely a priority in terms of making sure they could still have their appointments. So it's interesting what Nick just said before, that when you have to do something and you're forced to, usually you don't have capacity, it does really work. So that's the same thing that happened at Elsternwick and in Bentleigh, is that the ability to transfer all our clients and all the clinicians over to telehealth. Now, we did have telehealth before because we'd run by Alfred Health and the Alfred Hospital, and they already have those systems in place, but we really didn't offer it here. Actually, none of our computers even had cameras. So basically, it was a point that we found quite innovative, that the staff and obviously the youth all jumped on board. And when you don't have to go through those protocols of, should we discuss this, should we have meetings, and this is something we can be doing in the future, it was really a critical situation that things had to happen now. So within 3 weeks, we turned that around and everything was online. So we basically had no one at the centre here except reception taking referrals. So you could still ring up and they would put you through to the access worker, and then obviously make appointments online. All our clinicians had to be trained in telehealth. So we had 2 people that were trained to teach our clinicians. So that was quite challenging too, because we know that young people are quite adaptive and resilient and things like that, and good at IT. But some of our clinicians here, are not used to that world. So that happened really quickly too. We noticed that we had less cancellations because of this system. So things that were provoking anxiety and depression and all the things that they might have been seeing a clinician for originally, they might have been amplified, but because they had those current relationships with their counsellors or clinicians, they were willing to jump online and seek their appointments. So it did serve a purpose too for the safety within their own space. Boundaries got a little bit crossed to start with. Some people might have jumped on and not known how to act or behave online in an appointment in their own home environment. There might have been smoking cigarettes or whatever. So clinicians had to really, I suppose, set the boundaries in those first appointments. But it's interesting to see that out of all the telehealth services through the Alfred Hospital, and we run Caulfield and Sandringham as well, that Headspace was the highest user of telehealth. Now, obviously, because we have longer sessions, they go for an hour compared to some GP or otherwise. But because of that, I think we had less cancellations. So young people are quite fickle in terms of not worrying about, and because it's a free service, whether they pay or not, and cancel those appointments. So everyone, because they were in their own home or in a safe space, felt like they could click on quite easily and be in that space straight away. There's no travelling, there's no thought process. They can do that straight away from home, which was great. So our clinicians basically worked from home as well. So they would just have those links between them. As time's gone on, like I'm back in the office, I've been in the office for about 3 weeks now. Mind you, there's not a lot of people here. Our clinicians could then come into the consultation rooms. We have set up cameras, so we put all new technology in, which wouldn't have happened before until COVID. So that's one great thing, that we've now adapted all our consultations to have cameras within their space. So most clinicians now can come in here and do their telehealth. So the client doesn't have to come in, but our staff are here. And probably my biggest role then was to motivate our youth advisory group. So I facilitate that group. And what we try and do is look at how we're going to engage the community. So first of all, Headspace's messaging has been about the toolkit to be healthy and self-care. So we really followed that model, and it was a great thing to do because we could get our youth advisory group to actually do those things. So they were fantastic. We ended up pretty much having a fortnightly meeting turned into a weekly meeting, because we find that with online content, you really have to be quick and fast. So people are flicking through really quickly compared to an event you might take, you know, months to prepare. So we started having weekly Zoom meetings, and I found our youth advisory group really stepped up. So they started to produce all the content. So they might have had a theme, they created a calendar, so they had all their postings. So they would do the activities themselves. We had a special Google folder that they put all the content in, and then certain roles within the YAC to actually post. Now, in the past, it was usually left to me. So usually I would post on a social media, but we were usually posting things of events. So we really had to think, well, we're not doing events. We're not trying to do events online, but we're trying to send messages out there. That was more of our purpose. So again, Headspace is very much based on youth participation, and I suppose having their input as number one. And I don't do anything in the youth advisory group that they haven't discussed or considered. So they really stepped up and did that for quite a while. We have just switched it back to fortnightly, and like Nick said, it's really hard to keep up the positivity. So I think everyone has experienced the positivity fatigue, and also because we've been doing the self-care content for so long, people do get a little bit fatigued and tired from that. So we've just tried to establish where everybody's at and making sure it's not a burden. So you don't want it to, when it becomes work, then, and they are volunteers, not to be doing something that seems fun. We've also decided to use this time really to amalgamate some of our YAC groups. So Bentleigh and Elsternwick, their YAC groups are separate. We don't do a lot of things together unless they're at an event. So we've started a fortnightly social group that, and actually both myself and Ash, who's the other community awareness, we don't get involved in that one. We let them lead that, and that's so we want them to get to know each other. So when we do come out of COVID and we can start doing events, that they already know each other. So that's been a really positive thing and probably wouldn't have happened beforehand. On the screen, you can see something that's got a picture of an art therapist's work. We have an art therapist, Sarah, here at Elsternwick, and see something before COVID I didn't really have much to do with. I didn't post anything, but I've been talking to her and we've started to collaborate and put that in part of our social media calendar. And we've got a little video and bits and pieces that have looked at the challenges of something that's really physical, like art therapy, and how that's worked online for her. The other thing we've introduced was, because there is that disconnect from the centre, the youth advisory group does feel like maybe they don't get to see how the centre's run or who's involved and who are the clinicians there. So now we have our chat with the YAC. So every meeting that we have, we invite a clinician or a member of our team from Headspace, either centre, to come in for the first 15 minutes and just have a bit of a Q&A, like, you know, what's your role, what do you do? So they have an understanding of who they're representing, especially when you're sitting at home behind your screen and you don't know exactly what's happening. So for a young person, we try and give them that information, but just so they have a different perspective or can understand where everybody else is coming from. We have noticed, I suppose, more interaction with our staff because we're all in the same boat and doing something, you know, that we're not used to doing. We've all come together and really helped each other out, which has been an amazing thing. And obviously, like yourselves, you probably, well, I've got WebEx, Zoom, Microsoft Teams. Sometimes, like this morning, didn't work. I'm not using the phone. Technology lets you down, and you have to adapt to that. So it's really good to see people working together within our centres to help each other in that, but also how can we help each other while you're in isolation with your role. So for community awareness, people have been really helpful to wanting to be included in what we're doing, whereas beforehand not so. And just having access that when you have a meeting, so we might have a meeting with, 5 different other community awareness workers, not everybody can come, but having a Zoom meeting, pretty much the attendance has been fantastic because you don't have to take an hour out of your day to travel somewhere. So I definitely think we've made greater connections within our centres, which is something we will go forward with. And then the last thing which we were going to look at was the national messaging. So obviously we are our own centre, and like your centres or groups that yourself, everything is specific to your community. So Elsternwick and Bentleigh are the busiest headspace centres in the whole of Australia. So we have a lot of clientele. We did have struggle with creating new referrals. So although we thought there would be more people coming to seek our service, not more people were willing to start seeing someone. So that's a real challenge that we looked at. So we had no new referrals, but we had an uptake in people presenting that wanted more appointments. And many of those have now discussed that they would like to stay online platforms. So telehealth is definitely something that will stay. We also have noticed since the schools have come back, we have had a bit of a tsunami in referrals. So it's definitely looking at, you can see where that face one-on-one connections is really important. So you can do a certain amount of things online, but at the end of the day, when kids are at school or the youth is at school, it's when people start to notice that they mightn't be coping very well, whereas that might have been undiscovered in the COVID time staying at home. So we've also adapted our service so that we can offer telehealth within schools. So we have a certain amount of funding for the Enhanced Schooling Project that allows you to see a mental health practitioner without a mental health plan. And we've got this funding now till September. So we have 21 funded schools that we have in the 5 different councils here. So we've put a note out to them to say, why don't you, instead of them coming to the centre, if they don't want to leave school or it's hard for them to get here, we know that telehealth works. Everybody's really efficient at it now. You can provide a space in your school in the wellbeing area to connect on those appointments and have that support from their wellbeing team there, which is fantastic. So we hope that that will be taken up. So that's definitely a change for us and something that's really positive.
Hey, Kaz, sorry to interrupt, Kaz.
Yep.
We've gone a little over time. Are you able to wrap up in the next minute or so, just so that we can make sure everybody's gone by 11:05? Thank you.
Okay, sorry, no worries. Wrapping up. So definitely, even though it's been quite difficult not having people here, the lessons learned is that we are all adaptive, from the young people to the clinicians, to take something on board and run with it and give it a go, and then adapt now coming back to restrictions easing. It's been fantastic and such great spirit with everybody here. Everyone does feel more connected, even though we've been less connected physically. I won't go on about the national messaging. It was just that National have stepped up. So they've provided a lot more support online. So obviously for parents, carers and young people, we can give the information, but everything's online, from group chats, Headspace, and they've really just ramped up that level. So it suits the COVID environment, which is fantastic. So hopefully that was interesting. I'm not sure if that was enough information, but definitely positive things from COVID from us.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. Thank you so much. And just really interesting to hear that one of the key themes coming through from the presentations was around youth participation, which is hugely encouraging in terms of the work that we do at YACVic around trying to place the voice of young people at the forefront of those conversations. And there are some inherent challenges that go with that. So thank you so much for your time, Kaz, and for sharing. We're actually not going to have time time to step into the Q&A. So what I'm going to propose is that we collate those questions and share them with our presenters, and we'll just follow up. So everybody that's registered will get a link to the video after today, and any of the answers that we've been able to collate in relation to the questions that have come up. Please do stay in touch. Check out yacvic.org.au and look on the Get Involved events page, because we've got lots of webinars and events coming up, particularly the Digital Youth Work webinar that I think will be useful for people on the call today. And if you're in the Port Phillip or Stonnington area, please do reach out to Celeste and Claire. I can see they're putting their email addresses in the chat box as well. A huge thank you to everyone who signed up and logged in and joined us today, and a huge thanks to anybody who's catching up on this after the event through online. So without any further ado, I will close the webinar at this point. Thank everyone massively, and hope to see you soon.